If you are knowledgeable on motorsports, you would know about this certain season where, after a driver came off of two back to back titles, they were aiming for their third in a row in 2016. However, another certain driver, more specifically, a good friend of his turned enemy, was finally ready to defy him and win his first title once and for all, and prove something to the entire motorsport world. If you haven't caught on already, then the two drivers I am, of course, talking about are the two legends of the game. Lightning McQueen and Winford Bradford Rutherford. Lightning McQueen was the hot shot of the motorsport scene. He came from practically nothing and is now ready to not only win, but to dominate. However, standing in his way of pure domination was an old friend of his, one who he had a very close bond with but would ultimately fall through due to ambition, one who had everything he needed to win a Piston Cup but never had the circumstances line up, not to mention the fact that he was in McQueen's shadow despite starting before him. That driver is of course Winford Bradford Rutherford, and in 2016, an epic title fight between two old friends turned rivals would take place. This is the epic story of McQueen versus Rutherford in 2016. But before we continue any further, make sure to join the Discord and subscribe if you're new if you love watching Piston Cup content. So enough yapping, and here is the epic tale of friends turned enemies. To understand the impact and drama of 2016, we must first rewind the clocks to the very beginning. At first, there was nothing. Then a big boom, and now there was something. Through this time, a certain boy named Lightning McQueen, would be born, and he would take an interest in racing. Also like Lightning, another boy who was named Winford Bradford Rutherford, would also take an interest in racing, and after competing in karting, don't ask me how cars get into karting, these two boys would meet and establish a friendship. They both dreamed big of motorsport glory and vowed to each other that they will both make it and dominate the scene together. Anyways, time passes and both are storming their way up the ladder, and they eventually get to the series junior series where real scouts with big money are starting to watch. According to these scouts, there were reports that said McQueen was faster, however Rutherford was more analytical, which led to the same scouts believing Rutherford would have a greater success in the Piston series over McQueen, which I'm sure delighted young Rutherford's ears. Anyways, time passes yet again, and here McQueen at a very young age would sign with McLaren's Driver Academy, which means he has a very high chance of entering the Piston series soon with a top team at that, while Rutherford opted for the more classic route of winning until you make it, no strings attached. So for a long while, they would split up and their dreams of glory were now all up to them. McQueen continues dominating series like nothing. Rutherford continues dominating series like nothing, which then leads to Rutherford, after many title wins in the junior categories, being noticed by the big teams in the Piston series. They saw him winning and saw brilliance, so he will be getting his big break at the age of 21 in the Piston series, while McQueen will get regulated to private testing for that year. With Rutherford getting a drive in the Piston series with Williams, this of course means that in the race to glory, Rutherford now took a massive step forward ahead of McQueen. No matter though, the following year in 2007 would see McQueen get his big break with McLaren in the Piston series, which of course means that they both did it now. The two little boys with big dreams of glory were perilously close to achieving it, and from here on out, a new race would appear to see who on earth can get the Piston Cup first, Lightning McQueen or Winford Bradford Rutherford. Well, Rutherford's early years wouldn't be too special. He would be considered a great driver by all means, however, he had yet to score his first podium. Meanwhile with McQueen, well, I'm sure you know how good he did. In his first race ever, he stood on the podium, and in this rookie year, he would also win multiple races and compete for the title against some big names like Kimi Räikkönen and Fernando Alonso. And even though he didn't win, it was clear this McQueen kid is the next Michael Schumacher. Anyways, it's 2008 now, and Rutherford would finally step on the podium in Australia next to his best bud McQueen of all things, and this moment right here, it's just heartwarming to see. These two kids with such high ambition are finally on the podium together in the pinnacle of motorsport. These kids, if played right, could dominate the sport for many years to come, but time will only tell. Anyways, in 2008, McQueen would go on a tear with brilliant performances like in Silverstone, where he schooled the field on driving in the rain 101, and it would be performances like these that made people confident he could win the title, but there is a major problem. He is still new to the sport, and it showed, since mistakes like in Canada the same year where he rear-ended Kimi in the pit lane would significantly hamper his progress and allow Felipe Massa to close up on him. This season would also lead to the infamous Brazil race, which, if you didn't know, was the final race that year. It all comes down to this, and after a dramatic rain-soaked race, Massa would cross the line first and seemingly win the title. However, what he didn't account for is Timo Glock going wide and allowing McQueen, to overtake him, and this move right here meant McQueen scored enough points to actually overtake Massa in the standings and win the title technically after the race had finished. Dramatic scenes right there, folks. Anyways, McQueen did it. He won the Piston Cup in just his second year ever. And you might be thinking to yourself right now, where the hell is Rutherford? Well, I don't know, because he was kind of nowhere. He did get good results here and there, but again, he just faded into obscurity. He wasn't bad, but he for sure wasn't sending shockwaves. So after a strange 2009 where Rutherford nor McQueen did particularly well, Rutherford would sign for Mercedes in 2010, and here is the beginning of the end. Rutherford did this to establish his balls in the game, since Mercedes the year prior were known as Braun GP, who had won the Constructors' Cup, so theoretically, Rutherford is now in a championship winning team, but by his luck, the team were pretty mid while McQueen was again in a title fight. He ultimately wouldn't win that year, and normally he would pick his pieces back up and try again next time. However, this loss seemed to affect him pretty big. For one, he lost his mojo in 2011, which made him seem more sloppy in his driving, and for two, his girlfriend left him. It was not a good time for our boy. However, in 2012, he did come back slightly, but I say slightly for a reason. He got his mojo back for sure. However, McLaren seemed to have lost theirs. They gave him a good car, but operationally, they were not just bad, they were dog shit. Horrible pit stops and strategic error would fuck him in the ass that year. So McQueen, tired of waiting for another 2008, made the boss call. In a shocking move, McQueen announced he will be moving to Mercedes, which is of course where Rutherford is at, so he could win titles again in the future. Everyone, and I mean everyone, laughed at him because McLaren were a top team for decades while Mercedes were struggling to get podiums. What do you mean winning titles in the future? And for 2013, they were kind of right. Mercedes did pretty well in 2013, while McLaren were pretty mid. However, Red Bull was simply untouchable. Sure, McQueen left McLaren at a good time, but he was still never gonna win with Mercedes, so they continued laughing until they didn't. Rewinding the clocks, Rutherford would hone his craft following 2010. In 2011, he did nothing. However, in 2012, he would accomplish something big finally. He finally won his first race after 6 years in the sport, and Mercedes' first race in like a bajillion years. Things were looking so up, and with the new regs looming in 2014, they knew they had to get it right. So with the best friends pairing of Lightning McQueen and Winfred Bradford Rutherford, big things can come, and come I did. In 2014, Mercedes didn't just get the regs right, they hit it out the ballpark. Red Bull, who were the previous kings, won 3 out of the 19 races that year. Mercedes won the other 16. That's how good they were. So with no one at the top but themselves, they fought themselves, and here the cracks began to show. At first, it was really good fun between McQueen and Rutherford, but after Monaco quali where Rutherford allegedly locked up on purpose so he could mess up McQueen's lap was called out by Lightning, their friendship turned awkward real quick. Then after more tight races between the pairing reached its boiling point in Belgium where they crashed, all hell broke loose. They were straight up Snapchat beefing now in front of the cameras, and as a Mercedes advocator since day one, guys, please stop, this isn't you. Lightning, straight up said Rutherford wasn't his friend anymore and completely disregarded years of bonding between the pair, while Rutherford was avoiding saying Lightning's name outright like he was freaking Voldemort. It was bad, but more importantly, it was really sad. Anyways, back to the actual racing. Close races between the pairing would lead to Abu Dhabi for a decider race, with the Piston Cup eventually going to Lightning after everything that had happened that year, which severely demotivated Rutherford as his best frenemy defeated him fair and square. This demotivation would carry into 2015 where he made some mistakes and also just looked objectively slower than Lightning, leading to no title fight whatsoever, and after Lightning dogged his ass in the cooldown room at Austin after securing the title, Rutherford understood it now. This is geeked versus locked in. So, could Rutherford carry that momentum into 2016? Could Rutherford finally be his objectively better teammate Lightning McQueen? Could Rutherford, more importantly, step out of the shadow cast by McQueen and his 1982 champion father? Find out next time. Same duck channel. Okay, it's time already, and oh boy, 2016. the whole point of this video, so let's begin. The answer to the previous segment was yes, Rutherford can continue his momentum from the last 3 races of 2015, since for the first 4 races of 2016, Rutherford put lightning in a bottle by winning all 4 of them. McQueen was now under serious pressure since, come on now, you just won back-to-back titles, you're a 3-time world champion, do something. So enter Spain and yeah, you know how this one goes. Race starts and everything is fine initially until McQueen gets a mega drive out of turn 3 and pulls out for a move. However, Rutherford blocked that way without realizing it was too late, which led to McQueen cutting grass and eventually across Rutherford, which took them both out the race. McQueen's spirit was broken after this, and what didn't help is that McQueen's future arc with Jackson Storm was being set up right under his nose too, since Storm went on to become the youngest winner in the sport due to the crash. So yeah, tough times indeed for him. Anyways, more hissy fits and passive aggressiveness would happen in the races following, but more importantly, McQueen was starting to fight back. He would win races left, right, and center and go on a podium streak, but guess what? Rutherford was right there with him as well. Damage limitation was on maximum settings at this point since he was just waiting for his opportunity to strike, which did lead to moments like in Austria where the two would crash yet again, and even though they didn't DNF this time, man is it still painful to watch. However, Rutherford's golden ticket would come in Malaysia. In Malaysia, McQueen looked set to win, however, his engine went kaput with no cure for it, so that's it, he's out just like that. Something out of his control just swayed the cup hard for Rutherford, and McQueen needed to lock in instantly and at least get second in Japan, but he failed. A horrible start led to a mid-race, which led to 3rd place with Rutherford winning. Rutherford knew this was his moment. All he had to do was keep calm and be at least 2nd place until Abu Dhabi. In Austin, he gets 2nd. In Mexico, he gets 2nd. In Brazil, he gets 2nd. And now it is Abu Dhabi, and he needs to finish 2nd, and boom, he becomes a champion finally. The two boys who built their bond on ambition are about to achieve both their dreams of success, but at what cost? Their bond is all but broken now. The only thing that bonds them together anymore is pettiness and borderline hatred. So, here we go. Abu Dhabi. The race starts and it is boring as hell. However, what kept things exciting was McQueen being in 1st and Rutherford being in 2nd, which of course means that Rutherford wins the title. McQueen, knowing this, purposely slows down, not to let Rutherford pass, but rather to let 3rd and 4th catch up so they could overtake Rutherford, and after multiple laps of defending and attacking, McQueen would cross the line 1st and Rutherford would cross the line 2nd. Finally, Rutherford not only kept his momentum from 2015 into 2016, he not only achieved his dream of winning the Piston Cup and beating his objectively faster teammate in equal machinery, but he finally stepped out of McQueen's shadow and his father's shadow by becoming a world champion. And you want to know the best part of it all? Instead of letting McQueen recharge and fight again in 2017, Rutherford would retire a couple days after winning it, which means McQueen can never feel the satisfaction of ever beating him again. He now needs to live with the fact that his former best friend beat him, and there is nothing he could ever do about it anymore. Man, that was pretty heavy stuff. So obviously, there were ramifications from this. Firstly, even though Rutherford retired after this, he still, from what at least I could gather, felt some sort of regret for how things turned out, since again, that was his best friend. They dreamt together only to wake up in a nightmare, and that has got to have some pretty heavy effects on the mind and soul. Perhaps that's why he truly retired. And with McQueen, he looked in the mirror and saw a monster. He was petty, bitter, and worst of all, jealous of Rutherford, and he knew he had to get this monster out of his soul. So in 2017 and onwards, he would learn to be at peace with his problems and learn how to bond again with the people around him, which allowed him to not only be a better person, but a better teammate, something Rutherford wishes he could have had all those years ago. Today, McQueen and Rutherford still hold contact sometimes, and I say that pretty loosely because it seems more like they randomly encounter each other than plan to meet up with each other, which is fine, and it seems like as more time goes on, their wounds started to heal. There are scars that ache when they see each other, no doubt, but at least the bleeding has stopped, and hopefully, as even more time goes on, they could learn to be best buds again and appreciate the fact that they did it. they both became champions like they envisioned all those years ago. Anyways, that was the story of the most emotional title fight in F1 history. Dramatic much? Probably, but I don't care. This was fun. Also, I hope you know that yes, I know Rutherford's and McQueen's actual story doesn't line up with this, but if you couldn't tell that I'm just talking about the Silver War, but replacing Lewis's and Nico's name with Lightning McQueen and Winfred Bradford Rutherford by now, then I think you were lost. Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the flock for their continued support. And remember, if you want to see videos early and get some more cool benefits, make sure to join it since it also really helps me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe for better content, and make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.